Hello everyone, this is Teacher Suzie and welcome to my class. Itong video na ito ay continuation lang po ng last video na in-upload natin about the sum and product of the roots of a quadratic equation. So sa video naman na ito, we will identify the quadratic equation. This time, given na yung roots. Okay? Pero gagamitin natin yung paraan ng pagkuha ng quadratic equation given the sum and the product of the roots. So, let's start. By the way, itong mga examples natin ay paliwanag mula sa module ng grade 9 students ng Valenzuela City. Makikita sa week number 2 ng module, page number 5. So, I made this video for them to understand more what's on the module. So, let's start. Let's have number 1. Given ang roots. So, given ang roots, alamin natin ang sum and product, and then we will identify the quadratic equation. So, number 1, we have root number 1, or the first root, which is 4. And then the second root is negative 1. So, anong quadratic equation ang may roots na 4 and negative 1? Actually, meron tayong ibang video naman na nag-discuss kung na ibang paraan. Given the roots, paano makukuha ang quadratic equation. Pero dito, gusto kong ipakita na kukunin muna natin yung sum and product ng roots. Saka natin kukunin yung quadratic equation. Actually, marami naman tayong solutions and paraan sa math. Though magkakaiba ng solution, basta tama yung ginawa, we will still come up with the same correct answer. So now, let's continue. Let's identify the sum. So sum, kailangan lang natin i-add itong dalawang roots na ito. So for the sum, we will have R1 root number 1 plus root number 2. And that is equal to root number 1, which is 4, plus root number 2, which is negative 1. So 4 minus 1. So therefore, the sum of the roots is 3. Now let's have the product. R1 times R2. So root number 1, that is 4, times root number 2, which is negative 1. 4 times negative 1 is negative 4. So we have now the sum of the roots, which is 3, and the product of the roots, which is negative 4. So for us to identify the quadratic equation, we will be using the formula. Again, ax squared plus, or that will become minus na, minus the sum, which is R1 plus R2 x, plus the product R1 times R2 equals 0. Now substitute the sum and the product. So we're going to have here, since ang denominators ng ating sum and product ay 1, so hindi na natin kukopyahin ng a because a is 1. So we're gonna have x squared, and then minus b, ang b ay 3, or ang sum is 3, 3x, plus c, ang c ay negative 4, so plus negative 4 or just minus 4 equals 0. So this is our answer. So the quadratic equation is x squared minus 3x minus 4 equals 0, given the roots 4 and negative 1. Number 2. Let's have root number 1, which is square root of 5, and the root number 2, which is negative square root of 5. So we have radicals. Let's have the sum of the roots. So r number 1 plus r number 2, or root number 1 plus root number 2, that is the square root of 5, which is the first root, plus or minus the square root of 5. So in adding and subtracting radicals, kailangan lang po natin ma-add at ma-subtract ay similar radicals. Paano natin malalaman na similar ang radicals? Kapag pareho yung nasa loob ng square root. So this is a square root, pareho ng index, which is 2, hindi lang po nakalabas yung 2. And then pareho yung radicand, or yung term nasa loob. So similar itong dalawa, pwede natin silang i-add. At ang i-add lang natin ay yung kanilang numerical coefficient, hindi nakasulat. but it is implied that there is 1. So 1 minus 1, that is 0. 0 square root of 5 is equal to 0. Okay? And then, the product of the roots. Root number 1 times root number 2, that is square root of 5 times the negative square root of 5. So, positive times negative. Okay? The answer is negative. And then square root of 5 times square root of 5 is square root of 25. And the square root of 25, so we copy the negative sign outside. And then the square root of 25 is 5. Principal root, that is 5. Okay? Pag sinabi natin principal root, yung positive na square root, dahil may negative sign sa labas, we multiplied 5 by negative. So, that's negative 5. So, pag nag-multiply naman tayo ng radicals, we multiply what is inside the radical sign. Or hindi ba, pwede nating isulat ito as negative square root of 5 squared. And if that is the case, we just cancel out the radical sign and the exponent too. And then negative times 5 is negative 5. Okay? Now, again, the formula is ax squared minus the sum of the roots r1 plus r2x plus the product of the roots equals 0. So, again, ang ating product ay sum is 0 at ang product ay negative 5. Whole numbers, ang denominator is 1. So, a is 1. So, we will just write here x squared. And then, minus 0 ang sum natin times x, 0. So, mawawala yung ating bx because that is equal to 0. Okay, wala na eh. Kasi this is 0. 0 times x is 0. Okay, so wala na tayo nitong middle term. And then, plus the product. That is negative 5. So, we will write minus 5. And then, equals 0. So, what is present is just the ax squared and the c. Dahil ang b natin ay 0. Kaya, wala na siya. This is an incomplete quadratic equation. Okay? So, that's x squared minus 5 is equal to 0. Let us have number 3. Number 3, the first root is 2/3. And then the second root is negative 1/4. Ayan, fraction. So, let's have the sum. So, for the sum, r1 plus r2, we will have 2/3 plus 1/4. Ayan, hindi natin basta-basta pwedeng makuha ang sum because they are the similar fractions. Let's make them similar by getting their LCD. So, ang LCD nito, nakuha natin sa unang video, that is 12. This is prime already, 3. And then, for ang prime factors ay 2 times 2. Multiply natin yung mga prime factors, 3 times 2 times 2. That is equal to 12. So, I hope na master natin, maalam tayo sa fraction once na inaral natin ito. Dahil hindi talaga may iwasan na may mga fractions. Okay? So, the LCD is 12. So, ang magiging denominator, bagong denominator ay 12. So, magiging 12 ang bagong denominator. Sulat muna natin yung bagong denominator. And then, what will be the numerator na? So, let's have 2/3. 12 divided by 3, that is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. And ang 8/12, pag nilawas term natin, i-reduce natin to the simplest form, still equal to 2/3. Okay? And then 12 divided by 4 is 3 times 1 is 3. And we know that 3 over 12, pag sinimplify, is 1/4. Okay? They are just the same. Nag-iba lang yung form nila para lang maging similar. Para lang maging magka-pareho sila. Alright? And then, we will now add them. 8 plus 3. So, in adding similar fractions, we will just add the numerators. 8 plus 3, that is equal to 11 over copy denominator 12. So, this is the sum. So, hindi na siya mare-reduce to lowest term. Let's have the product. R1 times R2. So we have 2/3 times 1/4. 2 and 4 can be cancelled out, both divisible by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 2 divided by 2 is 2. 1 times 1, that is 1 over 3 times 2, 6. So the product is 1/6. Alright? The sum of the roots is 11 over 12. The product of the roots is 1 over 6. Now, let's have the quadratic equation. Again, the formula is ax squared minus the sum, r1 plus r2 x, plus c, which is r1 root number 1 times root number 2 equals 0. And then, substitute. We're going to have here ax squared minus, or burahin na natin yung a para hindi nakakalito na masyadong maraming variable. So, x squared minus the sum. Ang sum ay 11 over 12x plus the product, which is 1/6 equals 0. So, meron tayong rational terms. And para matanggal sila, we will multiply the whole equation with the LCD. So, ano ba ang LCD ng 12 and 6? So, that is 12 because 6 can be divided by 12. So, we will multiply the whole equation by 12. Multiply 12 and x squared. 12 times x squared is 12x squared. 12 times negative 11, 12x. Cancel na yung 12 and 12. So, what's left is negative 11x. And then, 12 times 1/6. That will become cancelled na si 6. Cancel 12, magiging 2. That is plus 2 equals 0. So, this is the quadratic equation. Wait lang. Ayan. So, the quadratic equation is 12x squared minus 11x plus 2 equals 0, given the roots 2/3 and negative 1/4. Let's have the fourth example. Okay, the fourth example, the roots we have are, so root number 1 is 3 plus the square root of 2. Ayan, may radical. And then the second root is 3 minus the square root of 2. Let's have the sum. R1 plus R2. So 3 plus the square root of 2 plus 3 minus the square root of 2. So, we will just combine similar terms. So, similar ang 3 and 3, they are constant. 3 plus 3 is 6. And then the square root of 2 minus the square root of 2, that is equal to 0. Cancelled out. So, the sum of the roots is 6. And then the product of the roots are 1, R2. Nakalimutan natin equal sign. Is equal to 3 plus the square root of 2, okay, times the quantity of 3 minus the square root of 2. So, kung natatandaan natin yung special product, this is sum and difference. Diba? Sum and difference of two squares. So, ang shortcut dito, pareho yung first term na 3, pareho yung second term na square root of 2. Magkaiba lang sila ng operation, sum and difference. So, nakalimutan ko yung nabanggit ko kanina kung sum or product ba or sum and difference. But this is sum and difference kasi plus and minus. So, what we're going to do is square the first term. 3 ang first term. Square nun. 3 squared is 9. Tapos, the operation is minus. Okay? The square of the second term. Square natin ang square root of 2. That is square root of 4. Principal root ng square root of 4 is 2. And then, 9 minus 2 is 7. So, therefore, the product of the roots is 7. Or, bahala na kayo mag-multiply nito. Kung gusto ng long method, use the FOIL method, distributive method, manu-manuhin. You will still come up with this answer. Okay? So, let's now substitute the sum and the product of the roots to ax squared minus the sum r1 plus r2x plus the product R1 times R2 equals 0. We're gonna have, so, x squared minus, ang b natin ay 6. 6x plus, ang c natin ay 7. Plus 7 equals 0. So, this is our quadratic equation. Ayusin natin. X squared plus 6x plus 7 equals 0. Given the roots, 3 plus the square root of 2 and 3 minus the square root of 2. So, again, as I said, meron pa tayong ibang paraan to get the quadratic equation given the roots. But in this video, pinakita natin kung paano makukuha ang quadratic equation given the sum and the product of the roots. So that will be all for today. I hope that you learned in this video. So see you again on the next video. Goodbye.